If you have an opportunity to tell a story about a pandemic, yeah, it's no-brainer pretty much.
I think our oxygen level's critically low. Propofol, get a phenylephrine as well, please.
It was one of those opportunities you just want to go for and take.
Leave a path for me just in case I need to come up to the top, okay?
Rochelle called me up and said they've got to shoot me in a COVID ward. Was I okay with that?
You go in with a plan in all documentaries, and then it completely changes. Within a minute of miking up Dr. Michael,
Hello?
he had like some ICU emergency. It was like, all right, we're off to the other ICU.
Set up for intubation. If you get me fentanyl, propofol, 100 milligrams of rocuronium and a size 8 tube.
Just keeping your eyes and ears open.
Okay, I'm on my way, okay.
Seeing where it takes you. Part of telling the medical story is obviously you want to find patients that recover.
You're doing really, really well. We're just gonna get you off to sleep for a little bit.
You follow them from being in ICU and then they get better. And when we first went to Dubai Hospital, I mean, we must have filmed with 5 or 6 different contributors that were well enough to sign release forms and stuff. But like, yeah, go back a few days later and pretty much every time there'd be 2 or 3 people that were there the day before that aren't there anymore, which is pretty sobering. I don't remember being scared, I just remember feeling the magnitude of the situation, I think, more than anything. And that's the thing that you discover about the virus itself. It seems to hit people and then they seem to get better and then bang.
There was one patient in one of the rooms. We filmed him from outside the door. He was sitting on his bed, he was fine, everything looks fine.
Didn't make it. They passed away in between us going back there. Kind of shocking to think, like, these guys filmed this person and then that's it, they didn't make it.
You would see that they were emotionally exhausted from these experiences. You know, they're going into really intense, high-pressure scenarios, speaking with COVID patients, being in the hospitals, being overwhelmed with the reality of the pandemic.
I remember Fadi coming in and saying, like pointing out the people who had died. Like, that was actually going on, like, rather than just seeing people in hospital beds. Obviously, it's, like, kind of heartbreaking.
Going through that footage and writing down whoever has passed and who has not and who is struggling, and it's seeing those people in their struggles was the most difficult part.
I think the main thing I took away was really just like a respect for the doctors and the nurses. I couldn't even wear the PPE properly for 2 hours, and they've got to do that day after day.
That year it started off with COVID sort of hitting in January and sort of coming here in Feb and lockdowns in March. So there was so much stuff going on. And then I remember that we had like loads and loads of debates about, we've got to get this finished by December 2020. It will be over by then and we'll be back to normal.
We weren't really sure how long the situation is going to last and whether like COVID wards are going to stay open with vaccines rolling in.
But then the second wave hits. Had a whole another side to it that was bigger and more impactful than what we were trying to tell before.
Phase 1 or phase 2 or lockdown and all the medical stories, there's so much going on there, and it's a story that's still going on now.
When you add in COVID, that takes it to a whole new level.
Making sure that all of the health and safety aspects that we had to follow were in line.
What team do we put on this?
Getting schedules in place.
Can we get people there safely?
PCR testing.
How long does it go on for?
And just making sure that we were ready to go at a moment's notice.
We knew budget wasn't massive on this, so we had to have quite a small crew.
Rochelle called me up and said they've got to shoot, which is going to be in a COVID ward, and was I okay with that? And yeah, I was like, yeah, okay.
He's like, all right, mate, where are we going? Okay, yeah. And that's the guy that you need. Production is ongoing whilst pre-production is also going. So you're organising stuff, finding different contributors, as well as shooting at the same time. We had a kind of group of assistant producers, researchers. Sort of look for stories and you scratch the surface and you just follow your nose a little bit.
And so we decided that we were going to go first and film the medical stuff.
Just having a look at your heart, happy with that.
Meeting some of the families that were affected, that's when it starts getting truly impactful.
I felt privileged for them to trust that I'm there and they can tell me the story. Like, I don't think everyone wants to tell their pain and be so vulnerable, like, around a stranger. And so I try to connect with them on that level.
We started speaking to this gentleman in the patient's family's waiting room called Mohammed Shafiq, and he said it would be okay for us to film his conversation with Dr. Michael as to how well his brother-in-law, Mohammed Nazim, was doing. What he knew about his brother-in-law was that he was actually on the mend. He was actually fairly stable and doing okay. We had gone in that morning and we knew quite the opposite. Because his kidneys had failed overnight and he was in this like really critical state. Bearing in mind, this guy doesn't even have COVID anymore, right? I think he's like 20 days clear of COVID or something, and his kidneys just gone. And the doctor comes out and he asks him, is it okay to film all of this?
It's not good news, so okay. So it's pretty critical today. So really, it'll be up to yourself whether you want to be there for what I'm about to say.
It's at that moment that you feel uncomfortable filming, that you feel like you need to turn off the camera. That is exactly when that camera needs to be on.
In more detail, it's up to you. You can decide whether you want them to be there or not.
You start questioning your morals, but then in a weird way you have a duty to the pandemic and the virus and the situation, and it's heartbreaking, of course it is.
Overnight, what's happened is his kidney function has deteriorated, and we're going to start him on dialysis this morning.
So still the status remains changed, like he don't have COVID virus.
He's had 2 negative tests, so he would therefore be deemed to be negative. But remember the domino effect. So flick the first domino and that's COVID, take COVID away and the dominoes keep on going, and that's the process that happens. Is that inflammatory process continues on even without COVID. COVID being there or not is now almost irrelevant.
Naveen, he was going through a really obviously incredibly difficult time. Like, he'd lost his father a few months back, and then his mother caught COVID. She had kidney complications, she was diabetic, not mechanically ventilated at first, which is about where we picked it up, was that kind of transition.
With her age and her comorbidities, honestly, if she ends up on mechanical ventilation, her prognosis is poor. Okay, just to be very honest with you. She's in her 70s, she has kidney failure, she has diabetes, she has other comorbidities.
I think a few days later, we got the news that his mom passed away, and it was just really sad because losing 2 parents at once was, I think, really difficult for him.
When we did the interview with him, I mean, the interview was finished. I was like, is there anything else that you'd like to say? And he launched into that story.
The last time when I saw her in CICU, she was trying to tell me something. She was telling me that, son, give me a last hug. Probably I won't survive. But I was not allowed to walk inside the room. All I could just make actions from outside saying that within 3 days you will be out from here. I promised her. But I couldn't keep that promise. So that last hug, I couldn't.
In terms of the mosque, that was just a beautiful experience, and very fortunate to be involved in that. Mosques are locked down. It is a real sign of the times.
Especially with the Friday prayers, because of how iconic it is for the Muslim community to come together every Friday, and now being able to do that.
The regular call to prayer is come and pray, and they're going, pray in your homes, pray in your homes. We heard that the first Friday that everybody was going to be allowed to go back to pray.
It was a kind of a natural progression to how Dubai was reopening.
So we thought, wow, it was a great opportunity. Like, we threw cameras at it. 2 Alexas, 3, 4 FS7s, we had the Inspire.
I don't think that it really hit me at how kind of fortunate we were to capture that until after the fact. I was kind of very focused on flying the drone, getting the job done, and capturing everything that we wanted.
If ever there was a visual evidence of how important that mosque reopening was.
That community, the sense of checking in on each other, coming together in a space that's sacred, I think people miss that.
You know, you're looking down on all of these people that are worshipping.
Like, they're in the car park, they're around the back.
It's a pretty spectacular visual.
Real privilege, I'll never forget that.
Yeah, this has been something that's impacted all our lives for the last 2 years now. And it was one of those opportunities that I think you just want to go for and take.
Being able to be part of a documentary on COVID, it's been rewarding, being able to see the people of Dubai just come together and work as one unit.
It is humbling that somebody will allow you and your cameras into their life in what is an unbelievably emotional and critical situation. It's an experience that will stay with you forever.